I'd be happy to attempt to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
If you were going to do this book on Haight, who would you have read it?
Well, this is the question was, if I was going to do the book on Haight, who would I have read it? If I'd have known I was going to, do I need this? This helps?
No.
If I'd have known I was going to spend 6 years writing a book about the Korean Peninsula, I would have learned Korean, first of all. I think that was my big mistake. Transliterating Korean characters, the different systems was very challenging. People used the Yale system, the McCune-Reischauer system, the revised romanization system. It was very confusing for me. And the language is so beautiful. I wish I had just grabbed a hold of it at the beginning. But there is an audiobook by Random House, and they got 3 Korean actors to record the parts. And I went to a recording session and listened to Tim Kang from the Mentalist TV show record part of the book. And there it was. There was the missing part of the book that I could never bring to it. The proper pronunciation, the intonation of the proper cultural milieu that I could never get right, being such an outsider. And it was really a tremendous feeling to feel a Korean American bring that part to the story that I just never could.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
How hard was it for you to get into North Korea?
It used to be impossible. You want to get in with a visa, otherwise bad things happen to you. But I think the Korean people have a great sense of hospitality, and if you go in with a visa, you're a guest. It's a very safe place once you're there. There's no crime. There's a monopoly by the state upon crime, and they need your hard currency. And I was treated very well during my stay there. Of course, citizens of the ROK in Japan and America are the great feared ones who have the most counter-narrative to the one in Pyongyang, the ones that they don't want in the most. So it went from impossible to very difficult to difficult. And actually, in December, just before Kim Jong-il died, they announced on the KCNA or KNCA website that they were going to allow American passport holders to come for the next Arirang Festival. So anyone with hard currency, American or not, was going to be let in. But I don't know if that's the case now, that so much has changed there. I had naively kind of applied to be, on their website they had like a scholarly exchange. So I kind of filled out my paperwork, which was probably just went straight to the CIA to see who wanted to go there. And then I tried to do a visiting scholar to Kim Il-sung University. I don't think those went anywhere. But I did meet a man, he was a wonderful man, and he worked with orphanages in South Korea. He was an orphan from the Korean War, and he helped me a great deal. And he had an NGO in the North building apple orchards. And so he had the trust of the North and the South, and I kind of went in as his little assistant. Very big assistant. It's hard to explain what it was like to move through thousands of people on the streets of Pyongyang and have such a physical, to be such an anomaly, to be not tall, but to be big and to look so different, and to have the streets kind of part. It's illegal to speak with a foreigner there. You could get in trouble. And everyone I met, I didn't have a genuine interaction with anyone. And everyone I met had special training to interact with me. But I was surprised that just walking among the people in the city, and I didn't try to engage anyone. I didn't want to get anyone in trouble. But people rarely even would dare glance at me as they went around me. Like it was too much of a risk to allow a spontaneous glance that someone else might see or report, or that could come back to haunt them. And to be utterly invisible in a place where I knew I was the weirdest thing to look at was so bizarre. And not even that glance, the tiniest involuntary split-second glance could be allowed. Spontaneity leads to danger, And when you read, narratives of people who've defected, they've been trained their whole lives to to do the opposite of reveal themselves, to keep everything in, and it's very hard for them to learn to speak, you know, again. I don't know if I answered the question. Yeah, Tom.
I was wondering if you could talk about your reaction to Kim Jong-il's death, and I was wondering if it was a bit like the people who were writing an American story right before the towers fell, and then all of a sudden the world has changed. But or just having spent so much time with him, I'm sure, in your consciousness, and then just, I guess, what your response, both as a writer and as someone who's begun to know North Korea was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wonder who knows North Korea. That's the thing. Whenever I see the experts on TV who seem to know it all, I'm very skeptical of them right away. I think we know a fair amount about the daily lives of people who have power inflicted upon them, how much they eat, where they live, where they work. But people who hold the power are still a big mystery. I became fascinated in this material in 2004. I became curious about propaganda. I was curious about the propaganda of the Bush administration. You know, in Camp 15, in the Kwan Lee So camp called Yodok, when you go to Yodok, you go with your whole family. It's the 3 generations rule. So if you get thrown in jail, your kids and your parents go. And they separate the old people, and there's a place called the Respect for Elders Furniture Factory, where you build furniture until you die. And, you know, that's not going on in America, but I started, you know, looking at things like the Healthy Forests Act that allowed more logging, and I was like, you know, that's not spin. That's a lie. And like the Clean Skies Act, I was like, it's not spin. You know, it's strange how those commonalities were there. But I became interested in propaganda, and as a writer, and as someone who tries to help other people write, I began to become curious about the own stories that I had been used to. In America, everyone is the center of their own narrative. Everyone's the central character of their own lives, right? We're all told that. And we all need to determine what we want, listen to our yearnings and our passions, move toward that, overcome obstacles, face conflict, look inward and backward, change and grow toward wisdom. But when I would read about North Korea, the narrative was just the opposite. There is one national narrative that's state-approved. It is the ultimate responsibility, and the true scripter is, you know, Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and now Kim Jong-un. And then there are 24 million secondary characters. And they're conscripted unwillingly to be part of a story that's not theirs. And to play those parts, they have to forego their own desires, their own wants, their own goals in life. They're told what they're going to be, where they're going to go. And any deviation from this part can come with great peril. And that, you know, as I started to research the book, I tried to find books by North Koreans, and they're only state-approved ones. I read a couple, you know, had some girl, fell in love with a guy, you know, he's not revolutionary enough, she helps him make his work quotas, you know, they get married, and, you know, get a two-shape pin.
And these were translated?
Yeah, the Grand People's Study House, actually, the North Koreans are really interested in promulgating their propaganda in all languages around the world, and that's something they're really dedicated to. But this story that was the opposite of the one that I had just absorbed and had never questioned fascinated me. I turned to nonfiction, and you know, Barbara Demick's amazing book, Nothing to Envy, hadn't been written there. It was harder 5 or 6 years ago even to find these narratives online. I had to look hard for them. And that human dimension seemed really missing. There were a lot of books about geopolitics and military and economics. But it turned out that the thing that fiction can do, to use the imagination to bring to life a missing humanity, was something I felt, you know, called toward. But the thing about the fact that there's no literary tradition there, because, I mean, you think of even in this worst Stalinist times, I mean, novels came out of the gulags. Like Solzhenitsyn got his work out. No one has gotten anything out there that we know of, that I know of in my research. And so maybe people, you know, wrote their novels and they were destroyed and they lost everything because of it, or maybe no one is doing it. But we're talking about 3 generations. And this is not just novels. When you go to the National Museum of Art in Pyongyang, what do you think's in there? Portraits of? That's it. It's the only acceptable material. Kim Jong-il on a white horseback. Kim Jong-il looking at Lake Chon on Mount Paektu. There's nothing else. In opera, there's no artistic tradition there that we would think of, meaning, interrogating the human condition and trying to find truth. And to think those people haven't read a work of art in 3 generations. The answer to the question is, there's one narrative there, and when Kim Jong-il died, the only thing that I did know was that this narrative had to continue, because there's no alternative. People keep asking me, are those tears fake or not? And I don't know, I'm not there. But this fake idea seemed really Western to me, that there was a real thing, and then there was another thing. But the other thing isn't there. There's one thing. And it's real and fake at the same time, is what I think. So, is Kim Jong-un really in power? I don't think anyone knows that. But they can't say, oh, forget about the Kims. That was an experiment. That was 60 years of indoctrination. Let me tell you about this new thing we've got for you. It's impossible. How do you get people to labor, to survive, to continue without that one story they have? Yes.